Hey, I'm Kate from dailytarotgirl.com, and in this video, I want to take you on a journey. We're going to dive deep into one particular tarot card, and we're going to dive deep into the High Priestess. And I'm going to show you how to really go deep into just one card and to really connect with that card in a way that will, from here on out, really change how you look at your tarot cards. So basically what I'm going to be doing in this video is kind of revealing the secret to really truly understanding what the tarot cards mean. Now, before we do that, I want to give you a little bit of a kind of semi-boring backstory of when I first started learning tarot. So over 10 years ago, when I was first learning tarot, the first thing that I did as soon as I discovered tarot is I set out to memorize all 78 tarot card meanings. I really focused on memorization. I focused on remembering the keywords and kind of the definitions of the cards. And not to brag or anything, but I was able to do it pretty quickly. I think I was unemployed at the time and I had a lot of time on my hands. And I learned the meanings pretty quickly, but I was still a really super shitty reader. And what I learned over the years is that there's so much more to learning tarot than just memorizing keywords and memorizing the meanings. And really what I found was the secret to learning the cards and being a really good reader was that once I was able to know each tarot card intimately, once I was able to look at a card, because basically the tarot cards are kind of like a map of your soul, especially the major arcana cards. And there is within all of us, so the major arcana cards are within all of us. Each major arcana card represents an aspect of you. And once you really get that, once you start to see yourself in the cards and start to see the cards in you, you really kind of connected intimately with those cards. And once you do that, the cards will open up to you and reveal their secrets whenever they come up in a reading. So one thing I want to show you before we get into the High Priestess is I have been reading Andy Matzner's book, Tarot for Transformation. It's called Using the Major Arcana to Discover Your Best Self and Create a Life Worth Living. And basically what I just said to you about seeing yourself in the cards and seeing, your life in the cards is kind of what Andy talks about in his book. So this book, it's a big book and it's a real deep dive into the major arcana cards. And he really kind of walks you through exploring each card in a really deep and personal way. So there's lots of journaling questions, exercises, and things to really kind of establish an intimate connection to each of the major arcana cards. So his book has kind of inspired this video and the method that I'm gonna walk you through in this video. So if you like this video and the method of reading that I teach, then in this video, then you might want to check out his book. And I'll put a link in the description box below this video on where you can find his book. Okay, so let's journey together into the High Priestess. So if you have a tarot deck handy, I want you to pause this video, look through your deck, and find the High Priestess. So the deck that I'm going to be using is the Universal Waite deck. And here we have the High Priestess. Now the High Priestess is one of my favorite cards. I absolutely adore this card for many reasons. Okay, so I want you to grab the High Priestess and have a good look at it. And if you don't have a tarot deck handy, that's fine. You can just look at the card that I'm holding up. Okay, so the High Priestess, she's about a lot of different things. So the High Priestess is she's associated with water, with intuition, the subconscious or the unconscious, cycles, kind of natural repeating cycles, the moon, and wisdom, and a bunch of other things. But those are just the top ones that come to mind when I look at this card. And like I said, she represents the subconscious. And if you look at the photo, if you look at the actual card, there's a sheet hanging behind her. It's like a veil. And that veil is supposed to represent kind of the veil between your conscious mind, the conscious world, and the unconscious or the subconscious. And so a question I have for you, which is actually a question in Andy Matzner's book, is how can we best move between the conscious and the subconscious part of ourselves? And I'll say it one more time. How can we best move between the conscious and the subconscious parts of ourselves? Another way of thinking of this is, what methods or what activities help you tap into that partially hidden part of yourself? I'd love it if you shared this with me in the comment section below. If something comes to your mind, feel free to share it with me. I'm gonna tell you a little bit of a story about this. So before I tell you that story, I'll say that some of the things that help me tap into my subconscious are dream journaling, so paying attention to my dreams. I think dreams are a very, very powerful way that we can communicate with our subconscious. And lucid dreaming, which is kind of the art of becoming awake in the dream. Meditative journeying and active imagination. And if you're not sure what those are, you can look them up. Meditative journeying, active imagination, both are really powerful ways of connecting to the kind of more subconscious or unconscious parts of yourselves. And automatic writing, or even like if you're familiar with The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, she outlines an exercise called the morning pages, where first thing in the morning you write for 10 minutes and you just write without thinking. You just kind of word vomit on the page, just without censoring, just blah, 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 just writing. And I found that's also a really powerful way to tap into my subconscious. So the story I have for you is about hypnosis. So a few years ago, I went to a hypnotherapist, and the hypnotherapist asked me to draw up a list of questions that I wanted her to ask my unconscious mind. And so when I was under hypnosis, she asked me all these questions, and I just babbled and babbled and babbled and answered them all. And she recorded that session. And so after my session, I listened to it. And I remember at the time thinking it was really interesting and it was quite helpful. And then I kind of forgot about it till the other day. And I found this recording on my old laptop and I listened to it, years later. And I was blown away at just like the wisdom and the insight and like the wealth of like deep spiritual knowledge that the unconscious part of my mind had. It was really amazing. Like years later, I was listening to it. I was like, oh my God, this is really good. And I was like writing down notes and stuff like that. So it's just really interesting how I think that we are so much bigger than what we are aware of. There's so much more to us than even we realize. And that hypnosis session just really brought that to light. And so that is really kind of the message of the High Priestess, is that your soul and your subconscious and your unconscious is this source of profound wisdom that you can tap into. And so she's really encouraging you to discover some new ways and maybe even rediscover some old ways of tapping into that side of yourself. So again, if you've thought of some ways that help you tap into this more subconscious part of yourself, feel free to share in the comment section. I'd love to hear about it. All right, so the next topic that the High Priestess presides over is intuition. So whenever the High Priestess comes up in a reading, it's often to remind you to really honor your intuition. So a question I have for you is, and that's one thing I like about about this book, is it really goes into, journaling questions about intuition and your relationship to your intuition, and how you know when you're getting intuitive information, etc., etc. But a question I have for you is, what is your relationship to your intuition like? So I have a theory that actually, I just got to back up a sec. I'm getting ahead of myself. Like, how do you treat your intuition when it comes up? Do you ignore it often? Or do you mistrust it or doubt it? Does it feel like an irritation when intuitive information comes up? Or do you feel thankful, appreciative? Do you often follow the advice of your intuition? Do you often go with your intuition, or do you usually go against it or ignore it? So my theory is that the way we treat our intuition mirrors the kind of relationship that we have with our soul. So your soul being kind of the deeper, more expansive aspect of who you are. And how you treat your intuition mirrors, the quality of the relationship that you have with that bigger, deeper part of yourself. So I'll tell you a brief kind of, not really a story, but for many, many years, I kind of treated my intuition like it was a pesky younger sibling that was just annoying the shit out of me, like trying to get my attention. And it always felt like my intuition was inconvenient in a lot of ways. In hindsight, I would realize, oh, my intuition was right. I should have gone with it. But in the moment when it would come up, it would often be really inconvenient. Like if I were to follow my intuition, it seemed at the time like it would be an inconvenience. And that was when I was sort of more concerned with fulfilling the agenda of my ego more than anything. And so, my intuition would come up and it would want to steer me in another direction. But at the time, it would feel like that direction was going to be more difficult than the direction that I wanted to take. So for the longest time, I ignored my intuition. I disregarded it. And the older I've gotten, the better I've gotten at listening to my intuition and really honoring it. I still sometimes ignore it. I still sometimes get irritated by it. But I'm so much better now than I used to be at really listening to my intuition and honoring it. And so if you want to connect more with that deeper part of yourself, that more expansive part of yourself, one of the key things is really tuning into your intuition and honoring it. And that's something that the High Priestess encourages you to do. So please, in the comment section below, if you want to share, feel free to share with me kind of what your relationship to your intuition is like right now, and maybe how you wish it was, how you would like it to be. Okay, so the other thing that the High Priestess represents is cycles and rhythms. So think kind of the moon cycles, even like the cycles of nature, of the seasons, the natural rhythms, the ebb and flow. Like there's, always a time, think of like day and night. There's a time for darkness and rest, which is nighttime. That sort of yin-like energy, and then the yang-like energy of the sun and daytime and activity and forward movement and action. And there's always kind of that ebb and flow of those two kinds of energies. And it's interesting because sometimes our relationship to our intuition also kind of mirrors our relationship to our own personal energetic cycles. Because just like our society as a whole doesn't really encourage us to listen to our intuition and to really honor our intuition, we also are not encouraged to listen to our bodies and pay attention to our own personal cycles and our ebbs and flows. We're actually trained and conditioned to ignore it and push past it. And that training begins really early in life. Like, as a toddler or a baby, it start, maybe not a baby, but like it starts with an alarm clock, right? Getting up for school, which then becomes getting up for work. And when I look back over my life, I realized that up until the point that I became fully self-employed, I was always running my life according to someone else's schedule. Like I was always setting an alarm and usually getting up way earlier than I wanted to for work or for school. And, if you have a regular job, you don't always have the luxury of, taking a day off when you're just like kind of in a low energy place. There's this pressure to sort of push through and always be productive and always be energetic, even if you're not feeling that way. So I think that our society as a whole is almost dependent on us doing this, because if everyone just started listening to their intuition and paying attention to the cycles of their bodies and the cycles of the earth, we would have a very different society. We'd be living in a very different world if we did that. Okay, so one funny thing I want to mention is one way that this is really illustrated is with tampon ads. So if you do a Google image search for tampon ads, you can do that right now while you're watching this. It's interesting what you'll see. You'll see a bunch of women doing really active sports. You'll see women climbing walls, doing backflips, playing tennis, kicking a soccer ball. And my favorite is this one advertisement. I think it's for Playtex or Tampax or something like that. And Serena Williams is on this ad, and she's like playing tennis and she's doing this fist pump. Like she's like, yeah. And the caption says, Serena Williams shuts out Mother Nature. And then there's this woman who's supposed to be Mother Nature. She's in the background and she's being hauled away by these two male security guards, which is an interesting kind of symbol if you really want to dive deep into that. But it's just the kind of ad that shows, like, it really like encourages us to not work with our body's cycles and ebbs and flows. And like, honestly, what woman who's menstruating feels like doing backflips and climbing walls and stuff like that? Like, it's really crazy. Okay, so I'm just going to move on to my next sheet of notes here. So the wisdom of the High Priestess is to work with your cycles and not against them. And I'm just going to show you the card again, because one thing that will remind you of this when you're reading it is she's wearing a hat that is shaped like the moon. So those two little horn things on the sides there are like crescent moons, and then there's the full moon in the middle. So a question I have for you is, how can you better honor your natural energy cycles? How can you better honor your natural energy cycles? And feel free to share with me in the comment section if you want to. So there's all different ways you can honor your energy cycles. For me, becoming self-employed was key, but there's other ways. So you can work with your menstrual cycle. There's a really cool book called Woman Code by Elisa Vitti, and she teaches you how to kind of sync your eating habits and your exercise habits with your menstrual cycle. There's also kind of working with the cycles of the moon, and this is really interesting. So you can experiment with paying attention to the moon cycles, and when the moon is waxing, so when it's building up to a full moon, that's when you want to do, things like trying to manifest something. That's when you want to really take action on goals and kind of reserve your high energy activities for that time. And then as the moon is waning, and as it's, dying back down to a new moon, that's the time that you want to focus on letting go of things, clearing clutter, releasing old patterns. And then with I always call it the dark moon, but the new moon, with the new moon, this is the time to go inward, reflect, recharge your batteries. So that can be an interesting experiment to try that and see how it goes for you. But also just asking yourself, like, what time of day am I most energetic? And how can I kind of rearrange my day so I'm planning my high energy activities around that time? And this sounds like such a simple thing, but it's something that we kind of forget to do. We don't always think to do this. Okay, so now you know the secret to really tuning into your tarot cards. Now we just focused on the High Priestess, but you can do a similar thing with every single card. So all we did with the High Priestess is we looked into kind of 3 areas that she represents, which was the subconscious, intuition, and the natural cycles. And from there, we went into each of those topics, and I asked you to ask yourself certain questions. And I think I only asked you like 1 question per topic, but you can certainly go much further than that. And I find that this is just a really, not only is this an interesting way to journal about tarot or to explore tarot, but this is how you actually start to really connect personally to the cards. And so now I can guarantee that if the High Priestess comes up in a reading, you're going to feel more of a connection to her, because you've already seen kind of how the themes of the High Priestess play out in your life. So if you enjoyed this approach to exploring a tarot card, I definitely highly recommend that you check out Andy's book. I think you'll enjoy it, and I really love the cover. And I'll put the link to where you can find out more about that book in the description box below my video. But I really want to hear from you, so I want you to tell me if you learned anything new about the High Priestess that you didn't already know, and if you learned anything about yourself that you didn't know from exploring the High Priestess. And what was this process like for you? How did you find it? Please feel free to share in the comment section below. And I just want to say thank you so much for watching. You might want to check out my website, dailytarotgirl.com. I've got tons of really fun tarot learning resources on there for you to check out. So give it a peek, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.